dialing in, and welcome to this webinar on how to get the compliance right during Workations, which is the second webinar in a series of three organized by us, by WorkMotion. So let me start off with a quick introduction of why we're actually here. Quite obviously, that's because Workations as a benefit for your employees are hot. You can see here on the screen, media are writing about it like crazy, especially in Germany. Tagesschau, Bild, Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung, creating a lot of awareness for other employers already offering this benefit to their employees, and employees, of course, being very enthusiastic about being able to temporarily work from abroad. But at the same time, we're not stupid. We know that you, as an employer, also have some second thoughts about this topic, which are mainly driven by compliance. So that's exactly the topic that we're going to discuss today. But before I introduce you to a wonderful panel that I brought with me, and I'm also going to introduce myself afterwards, I'd like to hand over to Patrick, to the General Manager of WorkFlex, to say a couple of words. And we'll get to this in a second.
Yes, hi everyone. Great to meet you. Some of you may already know me from the first episode that we had. So I organized the first episode. I will also organize the third episode. And I think we have so many great learnings that we can share in this group, but we also want to make sure that other people hear about it. So that's why in the last episode, we made sure we incentivize this and had a little LinkedIn challenge. We may go to the next slide. And basically, we want to share our learnings also with other people. So we would be very happy if you, the viewers, share some few learnings on LinkedIn. And to incentivize this, we are giving away 3 compliance workshops worth value of more than 4,000 euros, which you can do. And it's basically based on your needs. So during this compliance workshop, we can discuss the individual situation of your company, how to implement workation policy, etc. The only thing you need to do for this is create a LinkedIn post, maybe share some few learnings. So we had some great posts from the last webinar, and this time we will do it again because I think we have a great new learnings. I think the best way to do this is take a photo of a screen that you like, or with you even on it, and then put it on LinkedIn. And everyone can participate. The only rule is you need to tag me in it. My name is Patrick, so I can see that you posted, and have it by tonight at 8 o'clock. And also with this, I would like to announce the winner of last episode, because a lot of people of you posted, which is great, and shared some learnings. And hit the drums. The winner of last episode was Clara from the company Lights of the World. So thanks so much for sharing this. And we will then hopefully have a new winner of this episode. And with this, I would like to give it back to Peter.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to Clara. Very good. So you already saw a slide passing through about how to get interactive during this session, because of course we also really like looking at ourselves and hearing our own voices, but we're actually most importantly here for you today to answer your questions about compliance and share the experiences that you are really looking for. So we're really eager to hearing your questions. You can use, of course, the chat for this, but there is a better option. In the bottom right of your screen, you should not only be able to see the chat, you should also be able to see a button that says ask a question. Really good. You can use it to ask a question, surprisingly. What's extra cool of this feature is that the other users can see the question, but can also upvote it. So it can really help everyone, and also us especially, to see what all of you consider great questions, which of course increases the likelihood of that question being answered. If there's anything else, you can of course use the chat functionality. We're really happy with your interaction. So thank you very much for that. Quick introduction. I know that I'm visible in your screen as WorkFlex, which is not my real name. My name is Pieter Mande. I'm Dutch, that's why there's this funny I in between. You don't really pronounce it. but that's what we Dutchies do. So I'm a tax lawyer. That's my background. I worked at PwC, both in the Netherlands and Germany, for quite a long time, 13 years, always in the area of global mobility, employer compliance, remote work. Before joining Workmotion, beginning of this year, Workmotion, I'm the head of trust and employer compliance, which also means that I'm responsible for the compliance backend of Workflex, our Workation as a benefit product. But more importantly, I brought today two great panel members. And the first one, as you can see on the screen, sometimes I'm looking, by the way, that way, there's a second screen, is my colleague, Martina. Martina, can you introduce yourself maybe?
Sure, thank you, Peter. And good morning, everyone, and warm welcome from me as well. I'm Martina Mengi. I'm manager for Trust and Employer Compliance at Workmotion. And before joining Workmotion, I worked for 4.5 years at KPMG Law in the International Employment Law Department, where I was dealing with the challenging topic of posted workers, so posted worker registrations and posted worker obligations, which is, of course, a very interesting topic for me since I also completed my PhD thesis on that.
Thank you very much for that, Martina. So let's then, before we introduce the second panel member, get one question, let's say, answered right away. So Workationers and PWD, I know it's a hot topic for many people. Can you relieve us from our terrible situation where we're not knowledgeable around the question, do Workationers qualify as posted workers, yes or no? Can you tell us a little bit about that, maybe?
Yeah, of course, happy to do that. So straightforward answer is no. So we have a very strong arguments supporting the negative direction. Of course, there are different interpretations and there might be different opinions at that. For instance, we saw that Belgium is a member state that adopted a quite different approach. However, as I mentioned, there are very, very persuasive arguments leading us to the negative direction, both formal and substantial arguments. To just sum up, the posted employee is providing a service in the destination country, while the workationers are not, because there is no business reason behind their trip. And then, of course, since there is no service provision, there is not even receiving entity, service recipient. This is quite self-explanatory. And also, finally, last but not least, if we look at the registration form and the registration requirements, usually you are required to enter as a compulsory field a destination, a host entity, and also a reason for providing the service. And of course, the private interest of the employee doesn't appear among the possible business reasons behind the posting. So I think these are quite explanatory arguments we can use here.
A good point. Makes it indeed rather difficult to make a PWD notification and a rather, let's say, clear answer. Yeah, Belgium is the exception, maybe that confirms the rule in this setup. So thanks very much, Martina. So second panel member, really happy that she's here today. She's the lead cross-border employment at Allianz, but as you can see on the screen, the only one of the big four that she did not work at apparently is PwC. I don't know what was wrong with PwC. Carmen, maybe you can shed some light on that. Really happy to have you here. Carmen, can you say a couple of words to yourself?
Yes. Good morning, everyone, or good day. Carmen Andronis is my name. Yes, I was with 3 of 4 big fours, but to be honest, I would not really count Deloitte. I do not want to be rude or not friendly. It was an internship, and it had nothing to do with global mobility. It was another area. I was over 10 years with EY and KPMG, where I did only global mobility, and my experience comes more from the individual taxation, also social security. We had touch points with immigration, but also corporate. Exactly. And I have joined Allianz last year, and now we are together almost over 1.5 years. And I'm leading, as Peter said, the still hot topic, cross-border remote work globally.
And you're not only just leading it, you even won a prize around it last week, right? At the Emma Awards in London, it was, right?
Yeah. This was an HR and low mobility summit in the EMEA region. It was really very good content, also regarding our topic. And the closing was the awards dinner, where we won 2 awards. One against EY, for example, which I found very funny, and the other one among others, because there were a lot of big companies, around 15 or more, and one against Vialto. The one category was best employee experience and engagement, and the other was use of technology because of our cross-border remote work tool. In global mobility. And yes, it was really an amazing experience.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on the prize. That's really cool. Yeah, we'll get to speak about your tool a little bit as well later on. But at the core, of course, of this tool, just as with Workflex, by the way, is compliance around Workations. As I said, we are mainly here to entertain you, dear attendees, and answer your questions. So just to steer the direction of the discussion that we're going to have a little bit more, I would like to start a poll. You should be able to see it now, I hope. Otherwise, I have no clue what I've done wrong. But you should, in the bottom right of your screen, you should be able to see a poll. Yes, you can see it because I can see votes coming in. And you should also be able to see the results. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of time here and quickly go to the next slide. So Carmen, whilst the attendees are answering this question, what would you consider for Allianz the most important risk related to Workations?
Thank you, Peter. For sure, you always have to define what you are looking at. And for us, we differentiate between 2 setups. On the one hand, cross-border remote work on a temporary basis for up to 25 working days. And on the other hand, a so-called permanent setup over the 25 working days, maximum 3 or 6 months, depending on the entity we're talking about. And if I look at the temporary first, for sure, for us, where we see an alert, a red flag on the taxation side is to avoid the setup of a permanent establishment. And on the other side, on the HR side, would be, can we do the work without, or if we have an obligation to file for an application for a work permit or visa, this would be also a red flag for us. These are the hottest, the most important topics we're looking at first, yeah. And for sure, anything else is what I see on the slide is also very important. But the very first points are on the side of taxation, permanent establishment, on the side of HR, visa, work permit. And for sure, we look into payroll. For sure, we look into labor law. For sure, we look into social security.
Yeah, thank you very much for that.
And when it comes to permanent, if I'm allowed to add this, we should really never forget about labor law, where Martina is our specialist, because there, if you go over the 25 working days, there you usually have a risk, or you do have to look into the details if you really have a risk of shifting a labor law from country A to country B.
Yeah, thank you very much for this, Carmen, and thank you everybody attending and voting. A lot of votes came in. As you can see the results, the winner is permanent establishment, closely followed by social security, labor law, and visa immigration is relevant, but it's apparently not considered the key risk, and payroll is a little bit lonely with only 1 vote, but very, very good still. So thanks for this. Yeah, you've already mentioned it, Carmen. Labor law is an important topic. From my personal perspective, it's maybe not the most complex one around Workations. Martina, you might disagree, but I think it's one of the biggest topics. Martina, can you share a little bit of what are the relevant labor law aspects around Workations? Because it's not only PWD, unfortunately, right?
Of course. Well, I'm happy to disagree with you. that actually labor law is indeed a very, very relevant risk that we have to take into account, because this is a general remark that probably we can make also for other risks, but in particular for labor, the rules have been adopted not having the workations in mind. So if we look at available rules in the international framework, they were adopted thinking about business trip, posting, as you mentioned, Peter, and the workation is something completely new. So we see many, many gray areas, and as lawyers, when we see gray areas, we are worried because we know that there is room for different answers, for different practices. So this is another important thing. One thing is the law, another thing is the practice, and the national authorities might sometimes decide to adopt a different approach, which is something that happens already for posting of employees. Sometimes national authorities are stricter, sometimes are easier, let's say, but especially with workations, we can see big changes that it's not possible to predict in advance. And yeah, I think this is a relevant aspect to take into account. Apart from that, if we look at concrete examples, of course, I'm not going to provide you with an exhaustive list, but just to mention, we have to think about duty of care. So the employer's duty to protect the employee, to take care of health, of safety and well-being at work. Of course, it's something that it's quite hard to implement already when we have situations of home office in the same country. You can imagine if the employee is abroad, might be even more difficult. Then we have to think about travel insurance and travel cost. One might ask, hey, if I go on vacation, are you going to cover the cost or not? What is going to happen? And then you can also ask yourself if you need to add a collateral agreement. For instance, if you want to add an addendum to the employment contract to decide how to deal with all these complex aspects. So I think, I can go on for pretty much long time here, but just to give you a preliminary overview, I think labor, it's quite important.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Martina. So a lot of topics are relevant. So maybe this summary already triggered a couple of questions with you, dear attendees. So please, again, use the ask a question functionality. If you have a question in this regard, we'd be very happy to see some questions coming in and to discuss them in this round. So in the process, we will go through all of these compliance, let's say, risk dimensions one by one, focusing, of course, mainly on permanent establishment and also on social security. I presume some questions will come in the process. And maybe, of course, there's also some other compliance fields that are still applicable that are not on this list. You can also raise questions. And I think, Carmen, especially you will probably also have an opinion on some of the other risks that are relevant. But let's focus on what the attendees find most important, and that's permanent establishment. Let me quickly kick this off before I ask you to comment on this, Carmen, how you at Allianz put this to practice. So permanent establishment is obviously a corporate income tax risk. And what is the risk? Well, the risk would be that the workationer constitutes a PE in the destination country during a workation, which is, of course, something that you all do not want. So what's so typical with PE risk is it's, on the one hand, it is, maybe people disagree. I don't want to be too provocative, but I don't think that workationers really quickly will constitute a permanent establishment. Not for nothing. There is the word permanent in PE, and workations are by character temporarily. So I don't think they're constituted very well. But what the problem with PE is that if you constitute one, the consequences are massive. They're absolutely not in proportion to the workation that was enjoyed. Why is that? It may not even be too costly in terms of corporate taxes, but it is going to be very costly because of the administrative burden that it triggers. Having to register the business locally, having to do a corporate income tax filing, etc. So the risk is very big. And even if the chance of constituting one is small, I can totally imagine, and that's exactly what we see in the market also, that PE is indeed the most important risk for employers. Carmen, can you elaborate a little bit on how you see this within Allianz and how you try to mitigate this risk?
I'm happy to do so. Yeah, what have we done in this respect? I mean, for every company, you have, let me say, like core business or critical job roles. Yeah, you should look at. We have defined these job roles for us, for the core business insurances, yeah, and financial services. And we have decided for this, let me say, core business or critical job roles for us to somehow limit them. How to limit them? To go into a limitation of days being abroad, where you can, let me say, argue in this 2 or 3 days, even though you speak about the core business, you could argue they have done not the core business, but they have done, for example, a training, they have done anything non-specific to the business, yeah. And we also hand over, let me say, instructions to the employees going abroad, what they are allowed to do and not allowed to do. For example, do not sign a contract, do not go to the Allianz office abroad, because don't forget, it's about your private purpose. Stay in your foreign home office or international home office. And this is what we have done as a practice to avoid this, let me say, setup of permanent establishment. And this works. And for sure, there we have a lot of jobs that are non-critical. They're like much more, or let me say, easygoing or much more free, because if I speak about something like an administrative work task, yeah, where you do not have to take decisions, where you do not have to sign contracts, there you are a little bit easier.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, it's exactly right. So you can see the abbreviations on the screen. FPOB stands for fixed place of business, which is the PE that basically anyone can constitute. So not only so-called dependent agents. And yeah, as long as you're not there in a fixed place or you're not there for too long, which is by character the case for Workations, I think a fixed place of business, as you confirmed, Carmen, is really low risk. Same goes for service PE, because there's also a time constraint to this. But dependent agent PE, so day PE, is really the issue. And that's probably also one of the key reasons why you have not only Allianz, but more or less every employer that allows employees to work from abroad for a little bit, to put in a threshold of a particular number of days in place. Well, you mentioned that it's 25 at Allianz, and thank you for the question, and thank you especially for upvoting it. That threshold raises a lot of interest. So where does it come from? And by the way, I also see the upvotes for, can you please use the presentation mode? I'm terribly sorry, I'm only a text lawyer. I have really no clue how to change my screen on the right without making things even worse. So I hope it's still visible. If anyone can help me in the chat, also fine, but I don't think I'm gonna touch the screen. So I see your question. Sorry to not be of help there. Hopefully the question around 25 days, Carmen, you can answer.
Yes. Yeah. I can do so. Why 25 working days? I mean, if you look into the European Union, you could go much more higher. But if you go globally and you think of every aspect, you could have 0 days as an example. And we did not want to have such a difference between somebody wanting to go with, let me say, German nationality to Indonesia, not being allowed to do so, and somebody within the European Union being allowed to do 30 or 40 days. Yeah, we wanted to please everyone. We wanted to go with this global guidance globally, and therefore we have decided with 25. And also, if you think of corporate taxation or permanent establishment, if you would go a little bit more, if you would have like 50 days, this means you would be 1 day, or you could be 1 day abroad, regularly abroad, which could also have impact on the corporate taxation, which could also have impact on PE. Yeah, this would be another reason why we said we stay with 25 working days. Yeah, does this answer your question?
Yes, I think it does, definitely. And I can only confirm that, as I said, many employers have such a threshold. Of course, it is very much to manage the risk around PE, but it's also, of course, a business threshold just to, well, manage expectation of the employee. Also make sure that if multiple people go to a particular country, the accumulation of workations also does not constitute a PE. Don't want to make it technical.
Peter, I think I can't hear you. I don't know, Martina, could you hear Peter?
I should still be here.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
now.
Now
We
here.
lost you for 30 seconds, maybe.
Oh yeah, well, sometimes the world is better off without me.
No!
So, sorry for this. I see also that internet here. I'm even in the office, so I thought you would only have this at home office, right? But I see that the internet connection is sometimes struggling a little bit. I hope it doesn't happen again. I saw a question, and probably Carmen, you also saw it. Does it make a difference if an employee does a vacation in a country where we already have a PE? Does that, how did you include that in the policy at Allianz? Is this something that you consider?
No, we do not limit. We do not have any limit, let me say, globally. We do an automatical or manual assessment for each case, yeah? And we do not, let me say, limit if I don't have a branch or an entity or something else, yeah? Because usually we say in the global guidance, as long as you as employer don't have an obligation, we can allow it, we will permit it, yeah? And therefore we do not limit it. What I could add here is that it can be that the world is changing, that we have economic sanction countries, that we do have some information security countries with a higher risk, and this is what we could, what we would put a red flag on, yeah, or what we consider as a red flag. But anything else, it's not limited.
No, I agree. So it's a very good question, right? I think indeed it does impact, of course, if there's already a PE locally, but without making it too technical, but you'd have to discuss the question, but does this workationer work for the benefit of this local PE, yes or no? And is there already some kind of intercompany documentation and revenue shifting in place? So it's a relevant question. What you see indeed in general is that companies do not seem to make this a true topic around workations. So looking also at the time, going on through payroll, the attendees did not qualify this as one of the key risks. Carmen, can you, do you see this similarly or differently?
It is, or it could be a risk, because we do have, let me say, countries in Asia or countries in the north of Europe where you could have an obligation also on the employer side, doing a so-called zero return or zero wage tax return, yeah, and or you would be obliged to pay wage taxes or to withhold wage taxes from day one. I see it as a risk, and you should look in every country combination and into the local country if there is a risk or not. I would not oversee it.
Thanks for that. Yeah, so indeed, it's still important, but yeah, I think at the end of the day, PE is a very important trigger for a local payroll. So I can imagine that people tend to clearly focus on PE and only then look at payroll. Apparently very different for Social Security. That was the very close number 2 in the poll, so very interesting. But a question, which is a very good question, that was raised also, and Carmen, I think it's especially directed at you. Have there been any cases yet where a company has been penalized for an employee workation? Well, was it the case at Allianz, or did you see that with any of the other companies that you've been talking to?
No. I mean, I did not experience anything on the Allianz side, and I have also not heard about some penalties or different or similar things on cross-border remote work. I think we are still at the beginning. We are like developing. We should always have an eye on the law. Status today, it is okay, but status tomorrow, it should be reviewed. Yeah. But I have not seen it so far. Nevertheless, you should be prepared. And this is the reason why we have also developed this tool, because you could have internal, or you can have internal and external reviews from the tax authorities, for example, and you should be prepared to know how many people do you have, for example, or did you have in France, how many people did you have in UK with the German employment contract? What are the obligations? Have you assessed this? What have you done? Yeah. And this is the reason why we have this implementation of the tool.
Yeah, really good. Thank you. And thanks again for all the attendees now asking questions. Martina, you can already see that there's a lot of labor law questions coming in, so we'll definitely reserve some time for that. I can only confirm what Carmen just said on whether there's been a case already seeing penalties in practice or not. I think we've supported with WorkFlex over 5,000 workations without any, let's say, negative experiences. And the good thing in general here is that we expect that the true risk, of course, lies in the destination country. So as soon as the individual is back, the chance that a risk would really realize after workation is really small. And what is a very good thing that you added, Carmen, is that even though, let's say, you're German headquartered, the risk lies in the destination country, it is still a very good idea to put some process in place that you can show also to the German tax authorities. Of course, we know that our people are abroad every once in a while, but we've got a process for this, even though it's actually more designed to cover risks outside of Germany. I think this is exactly basically what tax authorities also in Germany and in other home countries, so to say, expect these days. So, Carmen, I still see that my internet connection sometimes is a little bit bad. So I might even ask you the open question around Social Security. What is, in your view, or like from a compliance expert's view, what is the risk around Social Security and workations?
Social Security, the way we treat it, or the way we, or our opinion on Social Security, for sure. For example, when you speak about cross-border remote work within European Union, you have to think of A1. You have to apply for it. Yeah. If you go outside of the European Union, we have PCOC or other applications. And the recommendation of any provider is to make the application. But they also, I mean, when we speak with them, they also recommend, or they inform us in which cases you could do it ex post. Yeah, I mean, you could have a higher or a lower risk where you can do it ex post. Yeah, if you are not, I mean, if somebody is requesting for tomorrow and you did not have the possibility to do it, you could do it tomorrow also ex post. There is like a lower risk or a lower risk eye on it, but the recommendation is to do it, yeah, and to be aware of the countries where you have a lower risk, where you could do it ex post, yeah. And I think it's also a topic to think of. You cannot simply ignore it. And for sure, we also learn about. I mean, we had the example posting of workers for Belgium, where they are like much more stricter. This is the topic where we also have some. Let me say, countries where they are much more stricter, where the risks are higher, where we definitely should do something.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so I think Social Security it's a complex topic. The risk is indeed twofold: losing your home country's security and maybe ending up in the destination country. I guess it's also a reason why many employers are limiting their workation policies these days to either the European Union, where there's a great treaty in place, or other social security and tax treaty countries. And that's also a question that popped up and it's been upvoted quite aggressively, really good. Are there any countries that are blacklisted as for a GDPR or tax view? Is that the case within your policy, Carmen?
Blacklisted GDPR and tax view, yes, we do have. I give you an example regarding tax view. One of our entities, for example, we do have a lot of entities. We are like 150 plus entities all over the world. we do have different company setups. Therefore, we always, when we think of cross-border remote work, have to look into all the risk and consider the company setup. And a blacklist would be, for example, for one of the entities with a headquarter in Germany, we do have a high risk of creating a PE in the Netherlands, and we do not allow any day of cross-border remote work going there. Yeah, even though we can be much more easier within the European Union, but we have this risk for one of the entities, and we say from day one, nothing. Yeah. But it can be that the same or the same country is green for another company setup. Yeah, because they do not have the same risk as we have, and therefore we can treat this different. And the other question, I think it was regarding GDPR. Yeah. Also there, we are about to review it, but we see it like GDPR on the national and international level pretty similar. Yeah, because even though if I'm sitting in the cafe in Munich, for example, or if I'm sitting in the cafe in Romania, where I come from, we should keep in mind what are the rules of the company. Yeah, I mean, this is not really permitted. Yeah, I mean, you should not go into the cafeteria or coffee shop and sit there doing or having calls, having critical calls, or doing such a critical job. And as I told you, we are about to review it to see if we have to adapt. But so far, we treat it national and international equal. Yeah, I mean, you have the same rules.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you very much for that. So GDPR is an example of maybe not a true compliance, or it triggers the discussion towards more data security, but also simple, or let's say more non-legal business security. Of course, you want your employees to do their work, and they can do it from another country, but you'd still have to appreciate some business rules and also some rules around GDPR or limitations in client-specific contracts sometimes. So over to the next topic, and as I truly apologize for the internet connection, which doesn't seem to be like 100% with me, around labor law. A lot of questions came in, so I suggest the following. Martina, you present this topic first, and then you look at the questions and you go through, and I'll still be moderating, of course, but I know you've got something nice to say around this slide.
Exactly, I do. So, yeah, as I said at the beginning, when we look at the employment regulations, they were not adopted having the workationers in mind. In the European Union, however, we have a regulation concerning international private law and the applicable law to international situations, which is already a useful starting point. So we can always distinguish if we are talking about the European Union, where we have this source, or if we are talking what happens outside the European Union. So let's have a look at what this regulation says concerning the employment law. So we have, first of all, reached a conclusion that probably will not make you very, very happy. I'm sorry to deliver this message, but you know, it's the awful truth. So let's face it from the beginning. Unfortunately, there are some provisions that might become applicable in the destination country. This is a fact, and if someone else told you something different, it's simply a lie, because it's clearly stated in the regulation that the overriding mandatory provision must always be applicable. However, and this is quite the good news that I'm happy to deliver today as well, it is very, very, very unlikely that this will become the case when we talk about workationers. And there are different reasons behind. We can talk about it for hours, but let's be brief, of course. So first of all, the category of overriding mandatory provision, it's quite limited. The regulation itself says that this is a category of strict interpretation. So we cannot give extensive, we cannot add many overriding mandatory provisions that those that already exist. If you ask me if I can provide you examples, if I can give you a list, unfortunately, it's not possible because there is no list available. So in principle, are the national judges that will have to evaluate if a provision is overriding or not. So we need a judge to find out. And if we need a judge, we need a conflict, we need a litigation. And this is also a good news. The conflict and the litigations usually are quite unlikely to appear for workationers, because the workationers are using an employee benefit. They are only temporary, so they are only for a short time in the destination country. And so they are unlikely to act to claim rights against their employer when they're using a right, a benefit that it's given to them from the employer. However, you might also tell me, hey, look, litigation might also occur independently of the employee initiative because there might be inspections, there might be national authorities doing controls. This is also something that it's very unlikely to happen. Just to complete what we said before concerning sanctions, we haven't seen so far sanctions. Why? Because the inspections are unlikely to happen. Also, if we look at posted employees, they usually take place in sectors that are considered as delicate, as dangerous. For instance, the construction sector, the agriculture, where there might be social dumping. If we think about a workation that is working from a hotel or a private apartment, we realize it's not really the perfect context for labor inspectorates to check what is going on there.
Thank you very much, Martina. So you can see a question that has been highly upvoted, but there's 3 questions that I think are relevant and you could probably answer in one answering streak. Is, am I still liable for my employees in the case of an accident? Is the employee allowed to work when there is a bank holiday? And, oh, it changed a little bit. Is it mandatory to create a contract addendum, or is a general guideline sufficient? Could you take those?
Yeah, of course. And I think that we can sum up with a very, very lawyer answer. It depends. So this is already the starting point. So let me tell you that this regulation that I mentioned at the beginning says, as a general rule, so the general principle is, when we talk about employment law, we are in the field of private law. And the general rule that we all learned at the first year of university when studying law is that in private law, the will of the parties is the basic principle. So in contract law, if the parties decided that a specific law is applicable to a contract, this is the general rule that must be respected. Of course, employment contracts are a special contract because the employee might find himself in an unprivileged, weak situation if compared to the employer. So there is some protection. The state might intervene to make sure that the employee is protected. But as I said, the general rule is the will of the party. So even if we look at the insurance, of course, it depends on the insurance contract that has been subscribed. And if we think about the working days, of course, it will be agreed with the employers and the employee. Because when we think about posted employees, for instance, we know for sure that you have to observe the law of the destination country for working hours. For instance, you cannot force the employees to exceed what are the minimum, the maximum working hours in the destination country. But workation is quite different. Workation is quite different, and we do not have actually case law or jurisprudence going in the other direction. So in principle, when there is a bank holiday in your destination country where you are temporary, there is nothing going against from you working. Of course, posting employees is something different, but it's important to keep the difference in mind.
Yeah, thanks for all those answers, Martina. I think that's really helpful. And question that's related is it's a rather long question, but it's on working hours of the destination country. I think it's similar to the bank holiday answer, correct?
Exactly. This is correct. I'm happy because I see from this question that they have clear in mind that a workation is not a posting. So if it was a posting, I would have to answer, sorry, in France, the working week is 35 hours. So you have to respect 35 hours. In Belgium is 38, you have to respect 38. But if we're looking at workations, which are different, then again, it's the local law of the habitual place of employment that will apply. And also, let me just add complementary information, since we have to adopt a practical approach. There is a huge difference in, I would say, everywhere among the effective working hours and the theory. So this is also something that I would always keep in mind.
Very good. Thank you very much. So looking at the time, there's around 10 minutes left, and we've got visa immigration to cover, but that was, let's say, not voted up very high in the poll. So I prefer to take, let's say, the outstanding questions that are upvoted before we talk a little bit about, well, how to manage these compliance risks in practice, especially, Carmen, how you do this at Allianz. Carmen, the question that's upvoted now very much, thanks again for all of those questions and votes. What kind of threshold of days do you see for PE risk within the EU?
Let me think of the logic of the brain of our tool. I mean, we do have the eligibility to request for up to 25 working days, but we also have in the one or the other case lower limitations. Yeah, because of PE, or another reason could be other topic. Yeah, not in the European Union, but for example, UK, because of social security and personal income taxation, we do have the limitation, even though you have the UK nationality, to go with the limitation of 14 days. Or I can give you also another example with Switzerland, who also have an 8 days limitation there, yeah, because of other reason than PE. Therefore, I can't tell you a clear answer to a limitation regarding days within the European Union. It's always about the eligibility for up to 25 working days. We assess every case, yeah, automatically or manually. And if we would have there a limitation, we will for sure go down.
Yeah, thanks. I agree. Unfortunately, there is no day threshold. For fixed place of business, there might be. 183 days is what you usually see in tax treaties around this. But for dependent agents, there is no threshold in days. It's only in, when do you qualify as a dependent agent? When have you constituted or done enough business locally? So yeah, unfortunately, no day threshold probably. It's that's what it makes it so difficult. Martina, very interesting question popped up. What should a company do if they learn of an employee working abroad for a long time and had not been previously notified? As the labor law specialist, what should they do?
Well, actually, previously notified has to be considered in the sense that they were not aware that the employee was working abroad. Do you share the same understanding of this question? Or if I'm getting this wrong, please let me know. Yeah, because actually, if the employee is doing something without telling the employer, here comes probably the risk. This is why you should definitely need to adopt a company policy, because when you don't allow your employees to do something, what happens in the end? They might still do it. So I think that to answer the question, the first thing I would do is that in case, of course, nothing happens, it's good. But if you find out that this happened and you were not aware, the first thing I would do is introduce a company policy to make sure that you inform your employee of the possibility of the limit, and you try to adopt a compliant approach.
And perhaps I can add a note in here, also based on the experiences we share within bigger groups or with other companies. A possibility would be also in the German word Abmahnung or warning in English to the employee, because like if you have a policy, they have to follow it. I mean, it's like there is nothing you can simply try and do it. It's something there. The rules of the company must be known, and then you could also go the way of warning or Abmahnung.
Yeah, very good addition. Thanks, both Martina and Carmen. I agree, right? Even if you did not allow the employee to be abroad, it can trigger significant compliance risks. So it's a big thing. You should do something about it. Carmen, I've already said earlier, we'd also like to learn from you how you in practice deal with these compliance risks, because it's great to talk about them for an hour, but of course employees may not be super interested, and you need to be somehow put this in a process at Allianz. Can you share a little bit on how you did this?
Yeah, when I joined Allianz last year, I mean, at that time the global guidance was already set, and my work was to prepare or to work on, let me say, make it easier, simpler, and make a proper assessment in any case. And what we have decided at that time was to develop in-house an assessment tool, the cross-border remote work tool, which covers only the temporary cases for up to 25 working days, and we have implemented it. We have started with a lot of country studies at the very beginning, and we grow with case by case, with assessment by assessment. We really look in every assessment. We look in every assessment. At the very beginning, we had, for example, 80-90% manually last year in the summer. Right now, we do have around, I would say, 80-85% that already works automatically. Because we have gained so much experience, in permanent establishment, in wage tax, in social security, in work permit, visa, that we could fit or that our tool can learn, and the brain of the tool can take it over and work on the cases manually. Automatically. But we still have, for example, countries for which we do not have a knowledge yet. The so-called orange cases, on which we work together with our team on each cases manually. Look into it internally if we can solve it, and if we can't, we would need the go of the business regarding the fee, and we work with the provider and define if the risk is high or low, and if we permit it or not.
Exactly. Yeah, very good. You've also talked about your tool a little bit already, at the Emma Awards, which we addressed earlier, but also during a Workation exchange round that we organized as Workmotion to, as you can see on the screen, to share the experiences of this topic of temporary work from abroad, but also to discuss the future expectation of this, what we call benefit beyond boundaries. And I just want to comfort all of the attendees here that you are not alone in your struggles around this topic. Every large employer in Germany, in the Netherlands, wherever, have this topic somehow on their desk. And you can see the individuals that we invited for this exchange round to talk about this topic, which I think was very interesting. Why am I sharing this with you? If you're interested in joining this exchange round and you have some good experience on Workations as a benefit and a compliance background or an HR background, we'd be very happy to receive your request for this. You can simply reach out to me either through Workmotion or LinkedIn. But more importantly, we've also created a report on this first exchange round that we had, where we share the key learnings of this first exchange round. And you can see them here on the screen. As you know, the sheets will be shared with you. But to summarize, it's a must-have nowadays. You will have a limitation in duration, a limitation in destination, tax and legal compliance risks, even for these big, knowledgeable companies like Allianz, Siemens, and Bosch. Also, they confirm that the tax and legal compliance risks are very ambiguous still. As Martina already said, the rules were not written for this setup. So we will be sharing this report with you after this webinar. I'm going to skip this one and basically say thank you. Thank you, of course, to the attendees for watching, for being so interactive. Many questions. I see there's still a couple of them open. We will answer them after this webinar. Thank you especially, of course, to you, Martina, and to you, Carmen, for sharing your great experience and for answering so many questions. So big thank you to you. And then I would like to make a last reminder for the challenge that Patrick introduced already at the beginning of this session. So posting on LinkedIn, but also the third webinar in this series, which will take place in a couple of weeks. You can register also, of course, through Crowdcast, and you'll be notified also through email. Last thing, again, my sincere apologies for the internet connection, which was a little bit mediocre. I still hope it was helpful, you enjoyed it. And then I also, on behalf of you, Martina and Carmen, wish all of you a happy rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. All the best. Bye-bye.